Good evening, and thank you all for tuning in to tonight's town hall. I'm Nick Asante, your 43rd student member of the Board of Education and a rising senior at Richard Montgomery High School. Tonight, I'm joined by other student leaders from across the county.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Wu. This year, I serve as your 35th student member on the Maryland State Board of Education. I'm a Montgomery County resident and a senior at Poolsville High School.
Hi everyone, my name is Lena Teitelbaum. I am president of MCPS-SGA and a senior at Northwood High School.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Morales and I'm the school communications director for MCR as well as a rising junior at Gaithersburg High School.
As we prepare to move into a virtual learning environment for this fall semester, many students have come up with questions about what their experience as a student is going to look like. Tonight, we're joined by members of the MCPS Recovery Team who will hopefully answer some of the questions that you guys have asked us on social media in hopes of clarifying what exactly your experience as a student will look like this upcoming fall. I'd like to begin the program tonight by hearing about the daily student experience. I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Sarah Sergo, the Director of Learning, Achievement, and Administration, and Mr. Tom Chapman, Assistant Associate Superintendent for the Office of Technology and Innovation. Dr. Sergo and Mr. Chapman, I know a lot of students have been asking me and a lot of students are really wondering when exactly are they going to receive their first semester schedules?
Hi, Nick, and hi, everybody. It's good to see you. So the work around scheduling, of course, as Nick is aware, is tied to the next Board of Education meeting. And so the Board of Education will actually vote on the schedule formats on August 25th. So we really need to make sure that clarity around which schedule we're going to use is finalized when the board votes. And so we hope that we will have that schedule determination and then student schedules in everyone's hands on August 26th. It's important, though, to remember that you guys already registered for your classes. So all that you'll be waiting on is just the order of those schedules and which classes will be which periods. And your staff at all of your schools are working hard to try to plan and prepare for that. So you'll have it in your hands as soon as possible after the board vote.
Students are very curious as to how their first day of school is going to look like. So what will their first day of school look like, and do they just get on their computer and wait?
That's a great question, Ashley. So no, it won't be quite like that. Prior to this first day of school, students will hear from their teachers, and that initial introduction will include information about when to log in, confirming the time of the classes, so that on that first day, students will know it's 9 o'clock and I have my first period, and this is the link for me to log into that classroom. It'll also connect students to their Canvas platform, where all of the courses will be. So they'll have when they log into the portal for their student view, they'll see all of their classes listed there as well, with quick links to be able to log in at the time of their class.
And after that first day of school, what's a regular day of school going to look like? Is it going to be the same experience from school to school? What's that experience going to be like for students?
Thanks, Nick. So we're going to try to make sure that there's tremendous consistency while allowing everyone to have their unique school experience based on the classes that they're taking. So on a typical day at the secondary level, students will have 4 classes, and those classes will be about 60 minutes or 1 hour each. And so that's what students can expect to experience on a given day. There will be breaks built in, and there will also be a consistent start and end to the student day. So in our draft plans, and again, they're drafts and we're continuing to work on them, the student day begins at 9 a.m. for middle and high schools. So you get to sleep in just a little bit. And then after you have your morning classes, which will be about 2 periods, there'll be a midday lunch break, which is scheduled at this point in the models to go from 11:15 until 12:30. Then in the afternoon, you'll have 2 additional classes. At the end of the day and throughout the day, there will be opportunities to connect with teachers, whether through an advisory period, homeroom, or a dedicated student support time. So each day will look slightly different based on the classes you take, but the schedule and the time should be constant across all of our schools.
Now, following that question, why isn't there a plan doing all 7 to 8 periods per day?
That's a great question. So this is about the idea of, could we replicate what we might do during a normal full school day when we are in our building? So when the design team was working on the secondary schedules, one of the things they really wanted to think about is how much time is needed to provide a really high quality learning experience. And as the secondary design staff and teachers kind of landed on an ideal amount of time to deliver that learning experience, 60 minutes was felt to be a quality time that would allow students to engage with the content or the course and each other. So if we were to provide all 7 classes inside of that 9 to 3:15 while making time for breaks and lunch, each of your classes would probably end up being a little bit less than 20 minutes. I hope we can agree that 20 minutes probably isn't long enough to get through all of the content. By the time you get started, the class is about to end. So we really wanted to make sure we prioritize you all having a really good experience and felt like 60 minutes per class was ideal. So to accomplish that, it's limited to about 4 periods a day.
And speaking of tailoring your schedule to an online model, on the draft schedule, we noticed that Wednesdays are a different type of day. Can you talk more about that experience and what that'll be like for students?
Sure. So the important thing to know about Wednesdays is, where did it come from? Why does it matter? So when we were initially looking at the opportunity of going back into buildings, at least partially, when that was something that was being designed, we knew that Wednesdays needed to be a time where we could have cleaning in our building. And we're really hopeful that in the not so distant future, we'll be able to continue and go back to exploring that blended virtual model. So we want to hold on to Wednesdays because that's a critical feature of our blended virtual programming, when students would spend some time in our buildings and some time at home. So we're trying to really think about how to use that time. One of the things we heard from our secondary students, and Nick was wonderful in pulling together a group a couple weeks ago, was they really wanted some time with teachers that wasn't part of the actual class. The idea of a virtual check-in. So the way that Wednesdays are being modeled is that it would be a time where students were either checking in with their teachers, and each period would have an opportunity to have that check-in time. They'll be scheduled of when you can check in with first period and second period and so on. And if you're not checking in with a teacher, you have time to work on your own. We know that middle and high school comes with a lot of additional work and time to study and read and collaborate and get feedback. So we wanted to make sure we had a schedule that acknowledged that and gave you all a chance to do that as well.
Since most of our schoolwork will be online, how will Chromebooks be distributed and lunches as well?
Actually, I'm happy to answer that one. So starting next week, over the next 2 weeks, we're going to have distributions at many of our schools. So all 206 schools will offer distributions for Chromebooks and other instructional materials, so that in elementary school, kids can trade in their devices to receive a new touchscreen Chromebook. We find that the touchscreen is really beneficial at the elementary level, so we find that's going to be a pretty good fit there. At the middle and high school level, some kids are eligible to upgrade their devices. If they're old, they can get a new device. The schools are currently reaching out to their communities right now, so expect to hear more about that over the next couple days. As for meal services, so we're expanding on that, and we're still working through all the details. We are going full scale breakfast and lunch at more sites and more distribution points. All students need is to provide their account number or their student ID, and they'll be given a takeaway lunch or a takeaway meal. More details are coming there, so expect to hear more about that from the district in the next couple of weeks.
One concern that I know a lot of students have expressed is their availability to attend Zooms. Now that we're in a very unique situation, students may have to work to support their families or may have to take care of siblings during their class period time. Will these Zoom lessons be recorded, or will there be a way for students to access these lessons after they've happened?
So that's a great question, and one that we're really continuing to refine and get feedback on. But one of the things that we're really committed to doing is, just like we would if we were in our buildings, is recognizing all of the different reasons why students may not be able to attend class. And as we look at the reasons why students aren't being able to attend class, how do we figure out how to make that learning available to them? And so we know that recordings is one of the options being discussed, but there's also many of our teachers put together slide decks that can be shared, or resources and materials. And many of our teachers have built out their Canvas classroom experience to be very self-directed. So we're looking at a variety of ways to make sure that students have the information that they need to be participating and engaging in learning, whether it be through watching a recording or a number of other ways. So stay tuned. We're still working out the details, but more to come.
As most of our classes are online, are Zoom classes mandatory? And if so, how long are they?
So yes, we want you to come to class. We are going to be taking attendance, and we know that our teachers are really excited about welcoming students back into their learning spaces. So we are asking students to come just as you would if you were at school, and to be on time and be ready to learn, and all of the different places and features of showing that you're present in school. And so those, yes, attendance will be taken. It's expected that you come to class as part of being enrolled in our school. And so we're looking forward to having our students participate and engage with each other virtually, just as they would in a classroom.
And as teachers are going to be operating from their own homes, many students are worried about teachers collaborating with one another to ensure that the workload that they're given to students is manageable. So can you talk more about how teachers will ensure that the workload being given to students is something that students can accomplish?
That's a great question, Nick. And I was remiss in not answering the last part of Ashley's question, which was around how long classes would be. So they will be 60 minutes, as I stated before. But in terms of looking at workload, workload is a very personal experience. So some students can handle certain amounts of work versus others. And so we want to make sure that our base design, or the amount of work that's given to students, is reasonable. And we also want to hear feedback as we go along, recognizing that every student may feel differently about the amount of work they're being assigned and the courses that they're taking. And each course has different levels of expectation in terms of what students have to do when they're outside of class. So I think, to answer your question, kind of behind the scenes, when your teachers are planning, whether they're a bunch of teachers who teach math, or they all teach the algebra course, but you have different teachers, they collaborate and they coordinate. And they talk about what are the kinds of learning experiences we can do inside of the classroom while students are with us? What are the kinds of things we need students to do on their own? How are we going to check to see if they've learned the material? What are the assignments we want to give? And I think the staff are very sensitive to the unusual circumstances that we're in. And they are looking to be responsive to how you all are feeling about the amount of work you're being assigned, the platforms, and all the different features. So we're going to start off by having our staff identify all of those pieces. What's the work that's done inside of classroom? What's the follow-up work? And then we'll be looking to hear student voice for you all to tell us how it's going and make adjustments along the way.
Thank you. So, as many of us are going to be taking these classes from the comfort of our own homes, people are concerned about pajamas. Is it true we can't wear pajamas to our Zoom calls?
Well, to tell you the truth, I've worn pajamas on the bottom in one or two meetings, but I kind of feel like from the waist up, I always like to look ready and prepared to learn and participate. So, MCPS doesn't have a standard dress code, as you all know, but we do find that it's helpful that students show their readiness for learning. And so I don't know that we're going as far as to say what people can or can't wear, but just as we normally would, anything that's distracting or interferes with the learning experience for the student or for the class, would be something that we would have a teacher discuss or address. But I think if you want to keep your pajama pants on the bottom, is probably okay. But, I find for me as an adult, and remember, all of your teachers are adapting to this work from home and learn from home experience, it's helpful to have a routine. So to get up in the morning, to put yourself together a little bit, to put on some clothes, and it's a signaling for you that, I'm in school now, it's school time. So we don't have a dress code. We're not going to be monitoring it in that regard, but we want you to be comfortable, but we want you to be present and engaged in learning too.
And now that assignments and tests and things like that will be completed at home without teacher supervision, a lot of students are wondering, are there going to be cheating measurements put into place to prevent cheating?
So I'm going to partner with my colleague, Mr. Chapman, on this, but I would say from a standard operating procedure, the technology parts of the platform, we have a student code of conduct, and we have expectations for our students around academic integrity and honesty, and we would continue to hold students accountable for those things. So, I mean, from a just as we would if students were in our classrooms, we expect them to engage in authentic learning experiences and to show integrity and honesty in doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sergo. And I'd also like to add that we're always looking to improve our various technology offerings and our connections and ties with curriculum. So while we're not necessarily implementing anything right now, we definitely will look to implement something in the future if necessary.
As many of us are very looking forward to buying school supplies, but this year it is online, people are asking, do we need school supplies? And if so, where do we get a list?
That's a great question and very timely. So we're still looking at that because a little bit about the process. Our schools, your school teachers, they submit lists of supplies that they want to be asking students to purchase. But clearly those supply lists are tied to you coming in the building. So there may be things that they would have traditionally asked you to provide or purchase or perhaps charged a fee that we're not going to need anymore. And so there's certain materials and that need to be revised in terms of those lists. So stay tuned. We are going to be asking our schools to update those lists based on what these new online learning requires. I think you'll see less supplies needed. At this point, what you need is a Chromebook, a way or whatever your technology tool is to access the platform. That's all you need to get started, but we'll be providing information to your schools and then they'll share it with you if there are additional and course specific things that you need in order to participate in those classes.
And so I know recently I just had my August SAT canceled, and I know this is a boat that a lot of students, especially juniors and seniors, are in right now. Are there going to be opportunities for students to take those tests at MCPS facilities within the coming months?
Yeah, so the conversation around SATs is one that is continuing to evolve. And, it's really tied to kind of what's happening with the College Board. And so, you have to kind of understand that there's certain decisions that are just for our school system and certain ones that really involve our partnership with the College Board. So right now, MCPS is working closely with the College Board and our local health officials to figure out what that fall 2020 administration could look like. And this includes potential opportunities for testing in September and October. And we have all of these things are potential right now. So there's a number of dates that we're looking at in September, October, November. As you all may know, there's typically one a month in the fall. But these test administrations are really dependent on decisions by our local health officials as it relates to COVID-19 and our ability to have students in our schools. So all of that is kind of unfolding. We're going to continue to work on those plans, and we'll publish information for the community before registration deadlines for all of the testing dates in the fall. But in the meantime, we really want students, it's the summer and into the fall, get on the College Board and Khan Academy website, make sure, you continue to look at those free online resources. There's some full-length practice tests and things of that nature. It's a personalized learning tools. So we want you to still keep it on your radar, but the details on administration are not yet clear.
And lastly, what will schools do for the senior portraits and yearbooks?
Yeah, senior portraits and yearbooks are super important. We have some plans as we're looking at ways that we can do that safely into the fall. Again, anytime we're bringing students and families out of their homes and into our school buildings, even on the property, if you've participated in any of the Chromebook distributions or materials distributions, you know that we take a lot of precautions with masks and gloves and social or physical distancing. So all of those features have to be really clear because safety is our priority. So we know that those are important experiences. We're committed to making sure they happen. So look for more information toward the fall when we have permission to do so safely.
Thank you, Dr. Sergo and Mr. Chapman, for answering those questions about the daily student experience. Next, I know there are a lot of questions about the learning experience in terms of testing, grading, and more. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Brenda Lewis, Director of Curriculum and District-Wide Programs.
Thank you, Nick. So Dr. Lewis, a lot of students are wondering, what will online PE look like next year? And what about for the arts and for music?
Jason and everyone, thanks so much for hosting me tonight. That's a great question that is on a lot of our students and families' minds. So let's start with PE. We will have PE through the virtual environment in a variety of ways. So our students will have those live instruction times where they're with their PE teacher, engaging in movement, mindfulness activities, but then also have time, especially at the secondary level, where they're engaging in independent learning and activities where they're tracking their progress, they're keeping logs, and but the importance around PE is to continue with that teaching and learning, but still being having movement and activity. And when it comes to arts and music, also having our students engaged in that live teaching and through that virtual setting and platform, but using ingenuity with that. How do we bring those components that we would have through the in-person experience and create those and simulate those through the at-home experience? And again, engaging with teachers, engaging with classmates, and then also with that independent time. And then at our elementary level, our students will also be engaged in that live instruction time with their teachers. And at the elementary level, a change that we've had from the spring is our students will not have those pre-recorded lessons, but rather be engaging in learning in those live teaching with their teachers that are right at their schools. So that's another way that our students are able to connect and stay active and engage in those specials, electives, arts and music courses as well.
Perfect, thank you. And I know a lot of students have been wondering, with only classes happening 2 days a week, how are we going to fit a full curriculum?
That's such a good question and a very important one. So there has been a lot of work around really examining that and looking at how do we do that? How do we have those that learning taught, but within the number of minutes that we have? And so there's multiple ways that we're doing that. We're first identifying what are the most important components of each course, and how do we highlight those and ensure that those are taught and learned by our students. So we work with our teachers and our staff to really identify those and then train our teachers on how to do that, how to make those adjustments, and ensure that our teachers have this supports and the guidance around how to ensure that we are teaching those essential components of each course while honoring the fact that we do have classes on a less frequent basis than we would in in-person schooling as well. So lots of attention around how to do that. And then also working on what does that independent learning look like outside of the live teaching sessions, and really ensuring that our teachers have the tools to have that high quality independent learning time that is age appropriate, course appropriate, good balance and flexibility, and also so that our students are well prepared and understand what that is prior to exiting their live teaching class, so they know exactly what the expectations are, but then also having those supports that are built in as check-ins and in the secondary schedules, so that our students are able to get that support on the independent components as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. This next question concerns grades. How will the grading system work? How will grades remain fair to students who might be struggling with internet access or different circumstances at home?
This is an excellent question and on everyone's minds. So we will have our grading and reporting, starting with marking period 1, and we will also have flexibility with that. And we'll also have guidance. So our teachers and staff will receive guidance on how many assignments should be assigned, how many points should be awarded, what does that look like overall for the course, and then also our teachers working together with one another so that our students are not receiving so much work and graded assignments, so that we really balance that. So we definitely are having grades, but again, we have guidance, professional development, professional learning for our teachers and staff around that, but with flexibility. So for instance, we have flexibility around due dates. Now, I'm not here to tell you there's no due dates and it's just you can turn it in by the time you graduate, but what I am here to tell you is work with your teachers, and we do have flexibility because we understand in this environment that's key for our students to be able to turn in their assignments and have those grades. So we do have flexibility built in as well.
Perfect, thank you. And then I know we have a lot of concerned parents as well as students that have 504s and IEPs. What are the plan for those students?
That's a great question as well. So our students that are served on individualized education plans, IEPs, will also receive services through distance learning plans as well that we have through the individualized IEP process. And what that looks like is, just as we have in-person schooling, really ensuring that as much as possible we have those services delivered in a co-taught environment where we have our general ed teacher as well as the special education teacher planning together, working together, and delivering that instruction. And our students that are on 504s also working so that we have those accommodations met as well in that virtual environment. And there's a lot of support for our students and families with our service providers, our special education teachers and staff, our general education teachers and staff, our counselors that are there to really support and help with IEPs and 504s as well.
Thank you. A lot of students are involved in band. How will band members borrow school-owned instruments?
I love band. I was a band kid all the way through, so this is very near and dear to my heart. So with respect to band, we will ensure that our students do get that access to those instruments. Now we are in the process, we have a variety of situations. Some of our schools have the instruments back. Some of our students have the instruments in their homes from this past spring, and they're going to continue with band. Some of those students, we need to get those instruments back so that we can clean them, tune them, repair them, all those pieces, and get them ready to go. So our band teachers and staff are working hard to ensure that we can get those instruments in the hands of our students, and all the way down to our fourth grade students as well, that this will be their first year where they can sign up to play an instrument. So we'll be marketing, working with our families on that, and really having those opportunities so that our families know that their students can be in band if they're brand new, and how to get those instruments.
Awesome. And then so many of our students have the great opportunity to be involved with dual enrollment. How is that going to work for students who are planning to take part in this?
I really have fabulous news on that. MC has just been phenomenal in partnership, and when they have been working and seeing our schedules, they are there to support us and ensure that our students have that access and opportunity in dual enrollment. So they're going to have classes before 9 o'clock and after 2:30, so our students can still continue with MC and don't have to make choices. So we're so excited to have that partnership, and just the way that they have also been so flexible with us and prioritizing our students to be able to take those classes as well.
Thank you. This next question concerns our workload. Due to less class time, will we expect more homework amounts compared to previous years?
That's a great question. And when I talked about independent learning or self-paced learning time, that I would also use the term homework. We think of it different now that we're in that virtual learning environment. So again, as I stated earlier, we're really working with our staff to have that good guidance around what is the appropriate amount of independent work or homework that our students have. And that's going to vary, obviously, on the grade level. It's going to vary on the course load, etc. So for instance, our sixth graders, brand new to middle school, are going to have a different number of minutes and expectation around that independent self-paced learning than you would see potentially a senior in a higher level class. So again, that flexibility that we have so that our students have that support in the independent learning and are able to check in with their teachers, get that guidance, etc. But we're really working to prioritize that balance so that our students and our families don't feel really overloaded by that extra independent, or by that independent work that they have.
And with such a new learning environment, what sort of things will teachers be doing to bolster the quality of virtual education?
This is so exciting. Our teachers have been so innovative. Even from when we started back in March, we saw our teachers just really looking at how do we have high quality teaching and learning in that virtual space. And along with that, we have been able to have professional development that we have rolled out. When we started continuity of learning in late March, our teachers got the training and the professional development on things like how to use Zoom, how to use breakout rooms, how to navigate within my MCPS classroom. So all of those components are there, and our teachers have had that. And now we're really seeing, as we moved into our summer programs too, just the innovations that our teachers are having in not only what is provided out, the learning that they receive, but also making it their own. So I think you'll see a lot of interaction, a lot of different ways for that learning to take place in a dynamic way, and also different modalities for our students to participate and be active in that learning. And a key piece of this also too is how do we work to balance that screen time and have our students still engaged, but not on a Zoom the entire time. And we have worked and will continue to work to support what are different components within the lesson and how can we do that. So it's just been exciting to see all of the innovation that we have seen our teachers demonstrate in spring, our summer program, and as they start to launch fall. And I have the delight that often teachers, I will receive slides from them that say, I'm so excited, this is what I did in my summer boost, and they show me and they email us and tell us little tips and tricks and things that they've made it successful. So it's very exciting to see what has happened and what is coming in forward as well.
Thank you. I know a lot of students have questions concerning magnet programs and magnet testing. So how will applications, testing, and selections for magnet programs be held this year?
It's a great question, one that we get often. So we are going to continue with the admissions for our criteria-based programs all the way elementary, middle, and high across all of our levels. But of course, like most things, we have an adjusted timeline and our process. And of course, that's reflect our virtual only model. So we will also be working to communicate that with schools and families coming up this fall. So that's a great question.
And I know students can't wait to get back to their unit assessments. How will we be taking those this year?
Assessments are near and dear to my heart. So I love that you had that question. And we are working on how to do those virtually, right? So really looking at ensuring that our assessments are aligned to what we're teaching and those standards that I talked about earlier, the learning components, but then how do we do that in a virtual environment? So we're working to provide families and students with what that will look like, but I'm here to tell you, you'll still have assessments.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for answering those questions about the learning experience. I know that there's been a lot of interest and questions about things like athletics and extracurricular activities in a virtual space. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Jeff Sullivan, the Director of System-Wide Athletics. Mr. Sullivan, or Dr. Sullivan, one question that I know a lot of students are asking, and one thing that I know a lot of students are wondering, fall sports, are they happening? What's the status? What's that going to look like?
Thank you, Nick, and I appreciate being part of the town hall tonight. I've got good news. Fall sports are not just happening, they're happening twice. So this year we envision a 2-semester model for athletics and extracurriculars. So that first semester is going to be a virtual experience, and we envision, if health metrics allow, the second semester being in person. So I'm very excited to deliver that news. Yes, we're happening, and we envision running that program. The program all across the year in those 2 semesters. I want to start with the virtual first semester and kind of dive into this. This is where the imagination, or what we have coined the term, the reimagination of the MCPS athletics program and also the extracurriculars and fine arts. So what does virtual athletics look like? We envision several things. Zoom calls with our coaches and teams and the ability to interact and have the relationship building. We want our students ready for play into the spring and the second semester when we transition to in-person. And we also Similar to the in-person fall, winter, spring, we envision virtual seasons being fall, winter, spring. So we will run all of our sports programs through that model, junior varsity and varsity. And the way to really think about virtual athletics, the way we are structuring it in our planning, is 4 big areas. The first one is system-wide opportunities. So we envision some system-wide opportunities across the entire athletics program for students. The second one is sports-specific. So we have design teams that have convened to shape experiences for each sport. So those design teams are consisting of our athletic directors, our leaders of our various sports, and we have representatives from our Student Athlete Leadership Council in each of those design teams to really shape the sport-specific experience. The third one is the school-wide experience. So we want our schools, our 25 high schools and our 40 middle schools, to also to be able to implement some programming at the local school level that's focused in on some things that they would like to do and some initiatives that they would like to move forward. And finally, one of the beauties of athletics is the ability for teams to have their own identity, and our coaches and our captains and our students to create their own individual experience, especially in a district our size. So we want to allow teams to have the flexibility to implement some programming and some engagement opportunities. So thinking of those 4 big areas, we look at what kind of activities we'd like to focus on. And like many things in MCPS athletics, we go back to our RAISE core values. And so we envision with the 5-week season, providing some activities that highlight each of our RAISE core values. So I'll start with respect and sportsmanship. You'll see some team building activities. We're lining up some great speakers to come in across the system, but also sports specific. So we're very excited about that. And really some engagement opportunities among our schools. So the chance for some of our rival schools to have some engagement, as well as just engage with other student athletes in your respective sport and across the program. Academic excellence, we envision across not just the formal 5-week season, but that whole first semester, providing support around academics. We know how important our coaches are to the academic support of our student athletes, and we, in an in-person setting, we want to enhance and elevate that in the virtual setting. And finally, with the academic excellence piece, college and the recruiting. There's been a lot of talk about that and the impact. So we want to support our student athletes that want to take their their athletic experience to the college level. We want to make sure we're providing those supports and structures across the program. Integrity and character. This is an opportunity for our student athletes to get involved in some community engagement, community support and activities, some character development, both at the local school and at the system-wide level, and of course at the team level. So how are we really becoming and enhancing ourselves as citizens in our community? Spirited and safe competition. This is where our skills and drills and conditioning come into play. So everything that you would think about with competition, we want to allow those opportunities. And of course, the safety side, we envision partnering with our athletic trainers to talk about overall program safety, but also safety around COVID-19. Not knowing what the second semester may look like, it's going to be important for us to educate our student athletes and really all of MCPS Sports Nation on COVID-19 and the impact on the in-person experience. So we envision that. And finally, we're very excited with equity and access to be engaging our new Equity and Social Justice Committee in MCPS Athletics. We call the members of that committee change agents. And we actually met with our Director of Equity, Mr. Troy Body, today, and really framing out some opportunities for us to engage equity and social justice across MCPS athletics, knowing how important that is, not just in our world, not just in MCPS, but across Montgomery County and in our communities. So we're very excited about just really shaping our virtual experience around those items. And lastly, we want your feedback, students, on what virtual experiences you'd like to see. So today on our website and on social media, we put out a survey to all MCPS Sports Nation to ask, what would you like the first semester to look like? And our RAISE Reimagineers who are designing that program are going to take that feedback and shape it. And I'm very excited of what it will look like when it's all said and done.
We have many questions to get through in this short amount of time, so to speed it up, how do JV and varsity work for sports this year?
So what we envision with the JV and varsity experience is the JV will be focused more on skill development and beginning kind of principles for a sport. So students that are really trying to get to a sport for the first time and get to learn about it would be signing up and registering for the junior varsity experience. And we envision the varsity experience being more advanced strategies, skills, and concepts. So that's a very quick overview of the JV varsity experience, but similar to in the in-person setting, we would envision that being applied to the virtual setting.
And now that we know that sports are going to be happening this fall, I know that a lot of students are wondering about other activities. What about clubs? What's going on with them?
The clubs will operate, and our clubs are very school-based. And so there, as you know, there's a variety of different clubs that are offered, some across all of the schools, some are specific to certain high schools or certain middle schools or elementary schools. So we envision clubs operating in the virtual space, and schools will be able to provide those programs. And we are working very closely with our friends in student leadership and extracurricular activities and fine arts, along with athletics, to streamline our efforts to make sure that we're opening up programs to all students and providing the flexibility for our clubs to occur across the virtual semester.
As many of our MCPS students are involved in many different activities, how will extracurricular activities work, and what time are the meetings?
So we're working through the final plans for that, but we will have a registration window for athletics and most of the extracurricular activities as well, where students will sign up to be part of that. And we envision the program running after school and during other hours, if there are weekend hours as appropriate based on the activity. The key thing here is flexibility. So we know that our students and our coaches and activity sponsors who are also serving as teachers during the day are getting adjusted to the virtual space and what a virtual school day looks like. So we want to provide that flexibility in scheduling to make sure both the athletics and extracurricular programs enhance that experience. And I know as part of our planning process, we want to hook our students into athletics, into the virtual space and extracurriculars, and be able to structure that program so that, similar to the in-person, as you're going through your school day and you can't wait to get to practice and can't wait to get to that club activity, we want to build that same excitement in the virtual space. So that is the lens for us as we're planning a program for you, is we want it to be so engaging that you're ready to go. And I think through including student voice in the construction of the process and providing that program, I think we're going to be successful. I know we're going to be successful, and I'm very excited about providing that opportunity for you.
And can any student sign up to join a club or a sport? What are the requirements for that?
Nick, that's a great question, and you highlight one of the most exciting parts of the virtual experience, and that is it's open to all students. We're using this virtual experience as a chance to open the doors to our athletics programs and our extracurriculars and fine arts, to provide students with the opportunity to expose themselves to a sport they may not have played before, that may have always been interested, but maybe were afraid to try out or and just wanted to get more information. So we're going to provide that opportunity to open the doors of the program to all students. So the registration process will be there. And we're hoping that that experience in first semester will springboard a positive experience into the in-person second semester.
Talking about registration, how will students still sign up and apply for Honor Society?
Thank you for that question. The Honor Society sponsors will follow their same routine to share the program information and application process as in a normal setting. Interest meetings and organizational meetings will be held virtually until it's safe to meet in person.
And finally, community service is a big part of any student's experience. Do you have any suggestions for clubs that are focused on community service? And is SSL still going to be a requirement for students this year?
Thank you for that. Yes, to begin, some suggestions: contact your local SSL coordinator. or Miss Donna Clefman in the MCPS Student Leadership and Extracurricular Activities Unit. They can connect you with your organization to some nonprofits through Montgomery County Volunteer Center. Clubs and organizations are great ways to earn SSL hours and make an impact on local need and to support our community. And in terms of still needing SSL hours, while the Maryland State Board of Education waived the SSL requirement last spring, we are still awaiting a decision for this school year. But until then, MCPS SSL team continues to approve virtual and at-home service learning opportunities, and they're regularly monitored by nonprofit agency supervisors. So again, your local SSL coordinator or the Student Leadership and Extracurricular Activities Unit is a great resource for you with SSL hours.
Thank you so much for answering these questions about sports and extracurriculars, Dr. Sullivan. And now that we have a better understanding of the student experience during the school day, I know many students are still interested in the mental health and well-being supports and resources that will be available for themselves and their peers. Next, I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Rochelle Rubin, the Associate Superintendent for the Office of Student and Family Support and Engagement.
Hi, good evening, Nick. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
As we go into unprecedented times, what actions are being done to improve student mental health?
So what an excellent question, Jason. Mental health is so significant, especially during this time of so much happening in our society and impacting our students. In MCPS, just like across the nation, we're on the cusp of discussing mental health. And we very much believe in providing an opportunity and a forum for students to be able to unpack some of the things that they're experiencing, whether personally or just looking at it on the news, or they have family members and friends who are dealing with it. So first up, to address what's happening with the pandemic and what it's meant for us during the period of continuity of learning and being out of brick and mortar, we're implementing social emotional lessons, learning lessons across every single level. So elementary level students, middle school students, high school students will all have the opportunity to really engage through community circles. Some of you may already be very familiar with that. And I think sometimes in the past, we've heard some feedback about how those are run in a way that's a little static. And so we're looking to upgrade and increase that. So the community circles will offer that opportunity for you to continue to engage with your peers, as well as the teachers, the adults in the building and whom you're very familiar with. In addition, lessons that really allow for the unpacking of what's happened, the anxiety that many students are feeling, and sometimes the loneliness, right? Being away from everything that you've known. This is a significant and enormous shift for many of you. And so the social emotional lessons will provide that opportunity to rebuild community, make you feel at home in the educational process again, and certainly to talk about the needs or anxieties that you're dealing with personally, and allow us the opportunity to really wrap around students and support them during this period. And that's just one. In addition, mindfulness, which many of you may be familiar with, like a really Zen moment, right? This is the opportunity to really get in touch with yourself and your feelings. So we've unrolled mindfulness prior to COVID, and this will be a great opportunity for us to continue to engage in that work. Culturally responsive relationship building. We're all familiar with the fight for racial justice across the nation and across the globe. And what it sparked is a great conversation, right? And the opportunity for us to talk and hear about different perspectives and really build that bridge. So those are all things that we're building in to the school day to support the mental health well-being of all of our students.
And similar to that, many of us know that our families can be our biggest support system. So will there be outreach to students who have low grades or family concerns?
That's an excellent question. This new virtual platform is challenging for all of us, right? Including the adults, such as myself, because you're engaging with the screen. How do you make a connection? How do you make learning meaningful? How do you make it fun, right? Because all of us still want to feel as though we're connected when we're engaging. And so our student well-being teams at the school level that were established, they were always there, right? You always had your counselor, your grade level administrator, the school psychologist, individuals that you can go to. And now we've come together as sort of one big cheerleading team. And there's a student well-being team as well as an academic well-being team. And so if students are encountering issues with either logging on, staying engaged, understanding the work, being able to navigate, time management is huge in this platform especially. And so those teams will have individuals who are reaching out, making personal phone calls, emails. Really, the counselors, we've been able to do our online virtual counseling. So the supports will be there, so our students feel as though they have that trusted adult to come to. And we certainly want to support the academics, because everything with mental health is all about making sure that students are available for learning and are able to be as successful as possible in the classroom, as well as in life, right?
Thank you, Ms. Rubin. So expanding on the topic of mental health, a lot of students want to know, who are our go-to staff members that we can turn to if we do need assistance? Do they have office hours, and how do we connect to them if we do need them?
Absolutely, Jason. So our goal and aim in MCPS is always and has always been that students feel and know that there's a trusted adult in every single school building in our district that a student can go to when they're having a problem and they need some help. The student's counselor is a first line of defense. Counselors are working, they are still available. That is built into the schedule at the secondary and at the elementary, and that student support time. It's built in for students to be able to make those connections. Your school psychologist, I would love to, if you haven't seen the Waymaking series, I'm plugging it. It is an awesome series that we were able to lift up during the time of continuity of learning. We've had students on that series. We've talked about anxiety, college readiness, social phobias, academics, you name it. We've talked about many of the issues that we've heard directly from students, that these are things that are impacting us and we'd like to talk about. So your school psychologist is a trusted member of the school population. Please seek that individual out. Certainly your grade level administrator. And I can't say this enough. When I was in school, I had trusted teachers who I felt like they had my best interest at heart. Teachers are engaging in learning and training all around mental health and well-being. We're all building our efficacy around it. And the teacher is always that first person that you can go to. Your building level administrator as well, your principal. I was a former principal. I had one-on-one relationships with my students. So these are all individuals. We're still working. We're still here. We still care. And we're available to just reach out to us, and we're ready to help.
And last but not least, will we actually be able to use the wellness breaks to rest and get work done?
That's a great question. Yes, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yes, you will be able to do exactly that. And we would also like to offer you some things. So it's a great time for you to engage in some mindfulness if you're into the yoga, some meditation, but also to sort of gather your thoughts, take a look at the body of work, what you have to turn in, what's due, when is it due, make a plan for how you're going to do that. Maybe reach out and make an appointment to speak to the teacher or the counselor, or just to like zen out for a minute. I wouldn't necessarily recommend like getting on Hulu and starting to watch a little TV, but definitely use the time to just come down and center yourself and then get right back to it.
Thank you, Ms. Rubin, for answering those questions related to the mental health supports and resources available to students. And now, to conclude the night, I'd like to thank all of the student facilitators and all of the MCPS staff who joined us today. Thank you for being present and willing to address the various questions that I know a lot of students have had on their minds. Hopefully this program today answered your questions, and remember to reach out to any of us if you have any further questions. Once again, to those tuning in at home, thank you for watching and have a good night.